Hello friends, this is Rajdeep. Welcome to Learning Insight for UGC-NET-JRF Social Work Paper 2. In this video, we'll discuss social casework process or stages. In our earlier videos, we have discussed the social casework concept, basic concepts, then objectives, principle, and then component of social casework. But in this video, we'll discuss the process or stages of social casework. So this video will help you to understand the different stages of social casework, and this video also helpful for the MSW and BSW students for their study material concern. So if you are new in this channel, consider for subscribing and do like and share as well. So let's start. Okay, what are the social casework process or stages? We know that the social casework process start with intake, study, social diagnosis, social treatment, termination, and evaluation are the main division of social casework process. Many a time in your NET-JRF exam, they ask the stages of social casework in sequence order. So at that time, you have to learn through the sequence of the social casework process. They sometimes they make changes the position of the stages, and you have to make in correct order. So remember, intake first, then study, then social diagnosis, then treatment, termination, and then evaluations. Now that they are the threads of the process that will continue to be interwoven throughout the social casework process. That means these stages are the main or fundamental part of social casework process, and without this, the process will not be completed. So let's discuss the stages in a brief way. So first, we know that intake is nothing but it's a process of first interview. So it's a first interview, first interaction of the caseworker with the client, and the interaction between the caseworker and the client is a first interaction or first interview, you can say, for the purpose of rapport building. So main purpose of this interview is to build a good rapport with the client. Second point, that is, client comes to an agency for professional help through a caseworker. That means the client who has the problems came to agency, and for professional help, that means the social caseworker help, and agency, that means social organization or NGOs. So where the caseworker are working and they give the professional help to the clients. Now next point, the relationship between two person of unequal position and power is developed. So in that stage, the first thing is that the relationship between that client and the caseworker is an unequal position and power as well, because the caseworker is who is a professionally trained, whereas the client who is unable to deal with the situation, that's why he needs professional help. So both the power of the two person is different. Now next point, the accept client as a person in a stressful situation. So it's a in our casework principle also, we have the principle of acceptance, and accept the client as the person he or she without any judgment or without any prejudice. So what we do, we should accept the client as he or she, and in a stressful situation. We know that the person is a stressful situation, that's why he came for a professional help. Now next, respect the client personality and help him resolve. That means you have to respect the personality. That means individualization, and then the you have to help them resolve the issues. That means the client having the problems, that way come to you, and now your responsibility or your duty is to resolve the issues. Now next is, after intake, that what you will do, okay, we'll go for study. That means social study. In the study phase, the client is engaged in presenting the problems. So in that stage, you have to engage the client to uh, present his or her problems. That means presenting the problem or engaging the finding the actual problem, not the what the client is seeing, that is maybe problem, but the actual problem may be differ. So you have to engage the client so that the main problem will be come out. Now the second option, that is, the key is engagement. Here the engagement is most important, because without proper engagement of the client, problems cannot be identified, or actual or real problem cannot be identified. Now next point, that client makes the important decision of whether to enter treatment. So in this strategy phases, you will understand that the client, what the client is feeling, whether he feels to enter the treatment process. That means after study you have to diagnose, then you have to go for treatment. So whether the client is willing to go for treatment stages or not, or enter into the treatment stages or not. Now next, that is emphasis on the interaction is on the here and now, and on the problems not as might be perceived by the worker, but as experience at the moment by the client. So emphasis has to be given on the here and now. That means every interaction or every problem has to be interacted and emphasized. Now next, that is data gathering and history taking concentrated on relevance. So you simultaneously you have to take the data for the different issues, and at the same time you have to take taking the histories of the client from his relevance, means whatever whoever the person is related to him, or you may have a doubt that this person's relate to the client and that may create problems. So you have to find the history of this history of relationship of the client with that persons. Now next, that is contracts during the initial phase may be among the most dynamic of entire process. Yes, this is the contract of initial phases is the most dynamic for entire process, because interaction and contact of the persons in a dynamic way is helpful for you for the entire process of casework. Now, the next, that the client is likely to feel most helpless and vulnerable and most available to the helping process. So, yes, he is a vulnerable and helpless. That's why he comes to you, and most available to the helping process. And he is need of help. That's why he is coming to he has came to you for the help. Next point is sympathetic listening, demonstration of acceptance, reassurance, demonstration of confidence in ability. Judicious shockings are the powerful tool of social worker, that means social case worker, and can highly therapeutic. So social worker should be sympathetic listening. You should listen the persons very carefully, and you should act that you are accepting the client, and you have to give reassurance, and you have to demonstrate the confidence of that you have a ability to solve the problems, and then things very judiciously and powerful. These are the important tools of social case worker, and you should be very therapeutic treatment, means you can be highly therapeutics, then only the client will accept you more confidently. Now next, that is social diagnosis. The social diagnosis is an attempt to arrive at an exact definition as possible of the social situations and personality of a given client. The type of social diagnosis. Okay, these 3 points are very important for your NET-JRF exam also, because under social diagnosis means identifying the exact problems, not the what the client saying that his problem is that or this, not this is the social diagnosis. Social diagnosis means you have to find out the actual or real or felt problem of the client. So this again, social diagnosis has 3 types, and this type of dynamic diagnosis, clinical diagnosis, and etiological diagnosis. So dynamic diagnosis gives an understanding of the current problem of the client and the forces currently operating within the client, within social environment, between his or her environment. So dynamic diagnosis is a current problem of the client, the problem that is operating within the client. That means the dynamic diagnosis is related with the client and his or her environment, and between his or her interactions. Now, what is clinical diagnosis? Clinical diagnosis is an attempt to classify the client by the nature of his sickness or problems. So again, in clinical diagnosis, you have to classify the client based on his or her sickness or problems. It identifies the client personality, maladaptation, and malfunctionings. So here you have to find out the what the lacking among the clients. That means you have to find the client personality, then maladaptations, what the malpractices of the client, and then malfunction of the client. That's why he is facing the problems. So dynamic is his or her interactions, and clinical you have to identify the classify the his problems or his personality related problems. Etiological diagnosis, this diagnosis concerns with the explanation of the life history of the client's problems. The present problem is seen in terms of past evidence and experience. So here you have to find the life history of the client. That means historical understanding of that problems. You have to understand the history of the client life as well as the past events and experience that client had, and then only you can diagnose the etiological causes of the client's problems. So these are the three cause and effect relationship you have to find out related to dynamic, clinical, and etiological. Diagnosis means you have to identify the cause and effect relationship of a certain problem. Now next, the social treatment. So once you diagnose the problems, means you able to identify the cause and the effect of the problem, then you can easily develop the treatment plan. So according to Hamilton, social treatment in casework is the sum total of all activities and services directed toward helping the client with the problems. So Hamilton ने बोला कि social treatment is sum total of, means total of all the activities and services that help the client for the reason he came, and the focus is to relieve immediate problems and, if feasible, modify and basic difficulties which precipitate it. That means you have to focus the immediate problem of the client, and if possible you have to modify the basic difficulties that the client is facing. So objectives of social case work treatment, these are the objectives of treatment especially in the case of process, to prevent social breakdown. So uh, we know that casework is something that is when the problem occur between the relationship issues. So here you have to prevent that social breakdown. You should prevent that area. Then conserves client stance, and means you have to preserve the client's stand, restore social functioning, develop social functioning, provide positive reinforcements, not negative, create opportunities for growth and development. So you have to create the space for the client growth and development. Compensates psychological damages. So you have to make this cover up or make up the psychological damages what the client had. Then increase capacity of self direction. So you have to develop the increase of the capacity of the client for he or she is able to direct him or herself. Then increase his social contribution. So you have to increase the social contribution of the client for solving his or her own problem. Now once this treatment is over, then you have to go for termination. And termination is something that is the ending or limiting of a process. That means you are now going to a stage where you are limiting yourself from providing the service to the client. That means you are going to a ending process. That was commenced when the agency agreed to enter into the interview process aimed at delivery services to a client with a problems. So this ending and limiting process is consultation with the agency, community, and caseworker. They decide whether they should end the or limit the process casework or not. A time when the client can look back with satisfaction on what he has been accomplished. And in that stage, the client must feel satisfied that what the problem he was facing earlier and what the problem he had earlier that has been solved, or he has attained the objectives or goals of the reason he came here. Now last point, that is signals that the worker has confidence in the client ability to learn, to cope with the situation and grow. And now at the simultaneously, the case worker also feels that I don't need any helps the client for his or her problems. And he believe the case worker believe that confident that the client is able to solve his or her problems in that situation, or in the or any problems he will face in future, near future. For that also, he or she is able to solve his or her own problem. So this is a kind of signals this case worker feels or feel confident about the client, and at that stage he can terminate the casework stages or processes. Next, once the decided for termination, then again he have to go for evaluations. So evaluation is a process of attaching a value of Evaluation is a process of attaching a value to the social of practice. So evaluation is a value that gives social case of practices. It's a methods of knowing what outcome are. So evaluation, we know that is evaluating something, that what is the outcomes of the practices, and evaluation is done on three important purposes. So it has done on the basis of the three important purposes. One, to let the agency and the worker know if their efforts have brought fruitful result in the service providers. So first they wanted to know the whether agency or worker, that means case worker, has given the effort that is fruitful, that the result was fruitful or not. Second, that for public relations, that means they want to build a good relation with the client and the agency. And third, to build a case for promoting funds. And third, that is the promoting funds related issues is there. So that's they build a good repo as well as build a case, a proper case for promoting their agency's fund. Now, case of practice need to be evaluated from time to time. So, the case of process is not only the evaluation in the at the end of the course, at the end of the process. Rather, it should have to evaluate time to time. These subjects need to be tested and researched, and most important, needs ongoing validations. So during the time to time evaluations, you have to test something or knowledge that you have to go through research, and you most important need for going ongoing validations. That means whether way you are going, it's whether it's a valid way of going or not valid, that's you have to research or test. They need to be proved to the public that they are effective and beneficial to the client. And again, the whole process should be prove to the public that their services are effective and beneficial for the client. Casework practice should be subjected to critical review, and these practices should be, or this clients and the process and the problems and intake, everything, every stage, every process should be critically reviewed. That whether you are critically means both the way that is the way, whether it's a positively or negatively, it's a negative impact or positive impact, means you critically have to review the whole process, that you whether you are going to a, or you critical review means you have to critically analyze or evaluate the processes. So this is all about, and if you like the content and the topic, then please consider for subscribing. So thank you, thanks for watching.